Hi, I'm Daines. I'm a Hollywood stuntman and I get to jump off buildings, set myself on fire, get hit by cars, avoid flurries of gunfire and jump through glass windows for a living. I absolutely love it. It's an adrenaline-fueled career, but I'm also keen to use my unique skill set to experience adventures off-set and in the real world. Although I do seemingly suicidal stunts, I've always loved animals and wildlife and had a keen interest in the natural world. And I've noticed that quite a few of my movies have had either animal or mystical themes like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Cats, Jurassic World, and my latest project is actually as a stuntman on Disney's new adaptation of the fabled Siren of the Sea, Ariel, in The Little Mermaid. All this talk of mermaids made me curious about the real mermaids that inhabit our planet. So I decided to take a trip to see the singing beauties of the sea for myself. Now, mermaids have been the stuff of maritime stories, folklore and legends for centuries. And rumor has it that these half-naked women, half-fish, have lured sailors to a watery grave for many, many years. But now we're a bit more sober. We've identified mermaids as manatees, and I am keen to see these creatures for myself. They're very real and very unusual, and I want to see just how sailors of the past mistook one of these creatures to be a mermaid. So come with me as I go on an adventure to explore the realm of the manatee and what makes these creatures so incredibly special. So I've come to SeaWorld in Orlando, Florida to be part of the rescue team here, and I'm meeting Brent Gabriel, who is the animal rescue supervisor here at SeaWorld. So tell us a lot about your facility.
When it comes to manatee, we are the largest critical care facility in the state or in the world right now, caring for injured manatees and also getting these manatees returned back to where they were rescued. Currently, right now, 2021, and you can see off that board, we have been a part of 23 rescues. We had 13 returns this year. And it's just not SeaWorld. We are work with several partners within the MRP when it comes to taking care of these animals. So it's FWC, it's SeaWorld, it's Clearwater Marine Aquarium, and several different partners throughout the state, all working towards one goal of getting injured manatees in to get them rehabilitated and then returned back to where they were rescued from.
Oh, that's fantastic. And how long has this Rescue and Rehabilitation Center existed here at SeaWorld?
Gosh, we've been rescuing manatees since we opened back in the 70s. So, and the program has evolved tremendously over the years.
Now, as you know, I've been working on The Little Mermaid in London as a stuntman. So actually, this is quite overwhelming because I get to see my very first manatee, the real mermaids that share our planet, for the very first time, and this is it's quite incredible. I don't quite see the half-naked woman aspect.
When you get a little bit closer, they're not as pretty.
So we are going to get to feed the baby manatees. This is like an incredible thing to watch. You have to kind of form a bond with them so that they trust you, that you can feed them, so that they gain weight and then can move on to the next stage of their rehabilitation. But it's important not to get too attached, I suppose.
Right. So once we stop giving them bottles, we're really hands-off with them. So you don't see us interacting with them or anything like that, because the ultimate goal is to return them back out into the wild. And so you want to kind of start that process.
And they know who you are, you think? Or you think they're very aware?
I mean, I think they know someone in blue is over there about to give a bottle. I don't know if they can tell the difference between like me.
That's all they care about. They can see the bottle coming and they just want their dinner.
Yeah.
This is absolutely incredible, and what a privilege to see these little calves being bottle fed. It's absolutely adorable. This is the highlight of my day, I have to say. Such great work being done here, and hopefully these little babies will then go off into the wild and create more calves of their own. That's what we hope for. That's the ultimate, isn't it? Really wonderful. That's done? Finished already? Wow, they were hungry.
This is Betty Sue. She was an orphan calf, guys. Yes. And that's why she has the brandings on them, because she has no scars on her, because she came in as a baby. She was returned a few months ago up towards the Tampa area, I believe. So she came back in, you know, the state FWC of Florida Wildlife actually brought her back in on a rescue, and now she's just getting better right now. So Dr. Duraco is going to get a blood sample off of her, and we're going to see how she's looking.
And unfortunately this year we are seeing quite a few older animals that we don't normally see who are coming in because they just don't have enough food available in the wild. And so their poor nutritional state is causing them to not only come in with some degree of starvation, but have a variety of other illnesses as a result of that.
So is it still a research in progress as to why this is happening?
Absolutely.
Have you got any theories of your own?
I don't know what's causing there to be a lack of food out there. I think that that's a much bigger problem, and it requires a lot of partnership between biologists and government agencies and experts in the field to really kind of sit back and take a look at the entire picture and get a better idea.
So the vet now is measuring Betty Sue's subcutaneous fat to really give a good indication of her physical condition and how's she doing?
I think her fat content is still okay. She has lost a fair amount since we sent her back out into the wild initially, but we have a good starting point from her recovery phase now. So when she fills out again and she's ready to go, we'll take more measurements. I expect that they'll be a little bit thicker than this, and then, like I said, if she's ever in trouble again in the wild and we need to intervene again, we can go back to these and compare where she's at.
Wonderful, and it's all ultrasound. That's just incredible. So it's all portable, so if you're in the wild, this can be done there and then in situ.
It could.
Wow, I'm just going to get out of the way of these massive tails because I was aware when Betty Sue was flapping her tail on the surface earlier. It's incredibly strong. I mean, that would break me in two.
Yes, these are very powerful animals and people don't realize, and this is where all the power is.
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna back away, okay? In the event of and the backlash of blackfish, I mean, what would you say to people about SeaWorld, that the great work you are doing here?
I think what I wish is that if people want to know what we do and they would like to have an idea of how they feel about us as people and us as an organization, come find out firsthand what we do. I am so proud of the work I get to do. I feel extremely privileged to work with these amazing species of animals, not only the ones that we help and return to the wild and contribute to conservation, but the animals who live in our parks also contribute to conservation, because people come here, they learn about them, and they start to care. And we hope that they take that away with them, and that influences their choices and their attention to what's going on with these animals in the wild. So my hope would be that people really get to know who we are and what we do and how passionate we are about the care and well-being of these animals.
I know, and that's why I'm so passionate about these animals, because I've had these up close and personal experiences and they've changed my life choices.
They absolutely do.
Which is why I want to, educate and raise awareness, and there are fantastic facilities like this, and there are creatures in need of our help that, you're doing great work, and we can all make a difference together.
We can. Thank you so much for doing this. We're really happy to have you visit and come see these animals. They're all individuals, and once you get to know them on an individual basis, you're so awed by each and every one of them.
One of the manatees in this critical care pool, if you look over there, you can see that it's very bloated. Now, she was brought in a couple of weeks ago and is probably the victim of a boat accident. And what happens is the boats hit them very hard, cracks a rib, and potentially tears the lung, and that puts air into the chest cavity, which needs to be released. And as you can see, she's floating on top of the water, so doesn't have proper buoyancy. So what we're going to do later is a procedure called a chest tap, whereby the floor of this pool is going to come up, drain the water away, and we're going to be able to get to the manatee and do this procedure to relieve some of the air and hopefully restore its natural buoyancy so that it can then repair and recover and hopefully be released back into the wild.
So right now they're bringing the floor up to the surface, Keep an eye out for that paddle so he doesn't splash water everywhere. Dr. Claire is going to clean a prep site, and they're going to give this animal some sedation, which is going to be an injection in the hip area. And then they're going to wait about 20 minutes to let the sedation take an effect before they do the procedure.
She has what we call pneumothorax. Their anatomy is perfectly suited for what they do in the wild, which is swim horizontally and eat seagrasses. So their anatomy is perfectly suited for that, but not great for boats. I love using a water bottle to demonstrate. If this is the manatee's head and this is the tail, you can see the surface of the water with the air, and everywhere the air is everywhere where the lungs on the manatee are. So their lungs go all the way down their back, and they have a lung with a diaphragm here and a lung with a diaphragm here. So what happens is when they get hit and a rib fractures, it'll fill up with air, but just on one side. So unlike other animals that may get a pneumothorax and the air fills their entire thoracic cavity, with manatees it just does it on one side. So you'll usually see them list on one side or the other. And so what we try to do is we try to insert a needle into the thoracic cavity to allow the air to escape and allow the animal to breathe better. Usually we do it every 2 to 3 weeks until the lung heals, and then once the lung is healed, that tap will usually be curative. We'll take out the air and then the animal can swim normally again. Manatees can have a hydrothorax, and that can consist of blood, like a hemoabdomen. It can consist of a different type of transudate, or it could be purulent with pus. And unfortunately that's a bad prognosis, and oftentimes we have to humanely euthanize them when we get pus to the thoracic cavity, especially if it's culture positive and we grow bacteria in it.
Are rescued animals here at SeaWorld added to the collection that you have here?
There's a very long process to determine whether or not an animal is determined to be non-releasable back into the wild. If based on our medical assessment and our medical examination, we determine that an animal can no longer survive, would not be able to survive on its own in the wild, we then will consult with the government, depending on which species it is, depends on what branch of the government we will be talking to. With dolphins, it's NOAA. With manatees, FWC, just as an example. It then has to go through a committee, to an outside committee with other veterinarians and other biologists, in which we have to discuss the case with them. We have to tell them why we don't think this animal could survive on its own in the wild. And then they have to vote and agree on whether or not the animal is considered non-releasable as we recommended. At that point in time, then they determine where the animal goes. The decision is not in our hands. It goes to wherever there's space, wherever the animal will be compatible with the other animals at that facility, so it's not necessarily our decision. We do have animals here that have not been that are considered conditionally non-releasable or non-releasable depending on which species you're talking to. And that's because the government deemed that that was the appropriate location for them to stay. This has been my dream job. I've wanted to do this since I was 5 years old, so I'm very happy. And manatees were always some of my favorite animals, so yeah, this is a dream come true for me to be able to help them. And every single one we release back into the wild is a huge celebration.
And why do you like working with manatees in particular?
One of the things is there's such calm, adorable, cute animals, and unfortunately a huge proportion of their issues in the wild is human caused. Yeah. And so that really spoke to me as a little kid. I was like, this is terrible. These animals are getting hit by boats, they're getting entangled in monofilament, they're suffering from the pollution that we've caused, and because it was human caused, you know, I felt like I had to make an impact to try to reverse or prevent some of the damage that us as a human species has caused with these animals. Aside from them being absolutely adorable, and education is imperative. And that's the other thing that's so much fun about my job is while I'm a veterinarian and I do clinical work, I also get to do research, which helps with conservation and also helps educate. But I also teach as well at universities and go around in schools and teach. And the education is so important for people to even realize what we do and how we do it.
What the team are doing now is making sure that the manatee can resurface on her own to take a breath, because she's so used to being inflated on her side that she's not used to using the muscles in the correct way. So she can feel very heavy and she might not be able to resurface to get enough oxygen. So they're just making sure now that the manatee will be able to do that before they walk away and leave her in peace. One thing I did want to ask you is how you feel about people wanting to see manatees in the wild, because I know you can go to Crystal River and you can actually swim with the manatees. Again, what's your take on that? Is it a question of having these experiences can inform life choices again, or do you frown upon that? How do you see it as a manatee expert?
So there's a lot of differing opinions on that subject, even within the field. It does inspire people and make them, because being in the water with them and seeing them face to face and seeing how they move, I think is something that can't necessarily be duplicated. And so for me, it was very inspiring, and I saw some kids on my tour group that were very inspired by it and were asking tons of questions, and they're like, oh my gosh, these animals are amazing. But it has to be done responsibly, and it has to be monitored very closely, and it has to be done in such a way that it doesn't
impact their behavior in any way.
Exactly. So I think there are ways for it to be done responsibly, but it needs to be regulated and monitored very closely.
Wonderful, because I would actually love to do that, to see them in their natural environment and just to observe them and yes, have that experience. I mean, I'm already a manatee fan, so I'm going to be spreading the word, but I just feel, like you say, it's unique, and it also enforces that bond that we have with the natural world around us, and to be able to appreciate you know, where these creatures live, what their problems are, and to really be able to give a more comprehensive view of a species in this day and age.
I agree completely, and there's little subtleties about them that you can't necessarily appreciate unless you're under the water with them. Like we were talking earlier about their vocalizations, they make little squeaking noises. You can hear it above the water, but it's really hard to hear. You can hear it much more clearly under the water. And then just watching how they interact with each other and watching how they interact with their environment and eat seagrasses, it's a whole nother experience.
Okay, well I hope to do that.
I hope you do too.
Thank you.
It's definitely worth it.
Thank you for everything.
You're welcome so much.
It's been amazing, and I am definitely a manatee fan.
Yay! That's what we want.
What an incredible day here at SeaWorld, and an utterly inspiring experience. The individuals here are so dedicated to saving these animals, rescuing them and rehabilitating them back into the wild. And to be so up close and personal with these animals, it really brings home to me how humans, with their activities of fishing, boating and destroying their habitats, pollution, are the worst perpetrators to the future of this beautiful species. So we all have to work together and do what we can so that we can afford them a better future, like keep our lakes and rivers clean, free of plastic, and not use pesticides when we can, so that the runoff doesn't get into the rivers and affect these beautiful creatures. So all that remains for me to do now is try and see these incredible creatures in the wild. So come with me as I go on that next adventure, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and spread the word.